Hello everyone. Today's session will be about Azure AD integration. On the right hand side, we are now logging in using an Azure AD user's credential, and it logs in. So the end result is looking good. So this is what we want to achieve in the session. And then I'm going to rewind and show you what needs to be done. Even though I already got it set up, I'm going to show you what has been set up, and then I'm going to set it up one more time. So then we can see what needs to be done to do the Azure AD integration. For the Azure AD integration to work, we need to create native app on the Azure Active Directory Admin Center. This is quite different from the SAML integration. So SAML integration needs to create web application, but for Azure AD integration to work, so then you can log in from the CentreStack side from all different kind of native app, iPhone app, Android app. Then we need to create a local native app. What I'm showing you here on the left hand side is an existing integration that's working. I'm showing you the permission section. So the permission section is very important in the setup. If you are missing a permission, it's not going to work. Even though I've set it up twice, I'm going to just forget about those and then set it up one more time. But for the two that's already there, I'm using it as a way to compare and in case something doesn't work. So now let's go ahead and create a new one. So we call it Azure Local Login 3. I recommend I just create a name without space, without dash, without underscore, and then pick the application type as native, and then redirect URL could be just a dummy URL. I put like HTTP localhost. There is not an important parameter here, so it could be anything. So now let's go to the application, all applications, and then let's find the app. And you can see I already created 3 of them. 2 are old working one, and 1 is the new. You only need 1. You don't need 3, 4. But all these apps are independent of each other. You can use one of them to integrate. You just need one of them. So the logging 3 is the one just created. We are about like 50% done. Even though the app has been created, the permissions and things are not there to get the integration work. So we will be working on that on the permission side. So as you can see, the newly created app has blank permissions. So we need to add those in. In the old classic portal, we don't need to look at the permissions. It's kind of easier to get the permissions set, or the permissions may be given like automatically or easier. So, but now it needs to be more explicit of giving permissions and adding them. So we need to add Microsoft Graph. Graph is not related to picture, but more related to users' permissions. Whether or not you can view users' profile, view their address, sign them in. Sign user in is the most important flag permission to give. There's actually another sign user in and read profile. So that one is not checked yet. I'm going to show you without it, it's not going to work. So after giving these permissions, for example, some read permissions you can give if you want to. And typically I like to give read permissions. It's kind of like it doesn't hurt, but there's so many permissions, kind of just give them kind of way when I'm trying things out. And later on you can get rid of them if you don't need them. But in the trial and error mode, I just, if it's read, I just give them, a little bit more to start with. So now let's go to Azure app, the third app, and check the permissions. So we did the add permission, but permissions are still not showing up. So that's a interesting thing about the new portal. So after you add the permissions are still not showing up, and let's check on what's going on. Because in the classic portal, once you grant the permissions, it's automatically kind of given. So there's a slight difference between the new portal and the old portal. There's a grant permissions button hidden very deep in hierarchy here. So that needs to be clicked. So that's kind of the, a bit tricky, but that's kind of the key to get it work. Now let's go back to the Azure app. Let's search for our app, and which is the third app. We are trying to make it work, and now you see the permissions are showing up. So we are about 90% there. I mentioned a little bit earlier ago there are 2 sign-in permissions. We only check one of them. So then let's just give it a try and see if it works, because if this is the first time you're setting up the Azure integration, you know very well you'll be like me to kind of forget about that, like over maybe 40, 50 permissions. It's kind of hard to find both of them. So now let's give it a try and see what's going on. So if it's the first time you're at the page configuration page here, it could be all blank and empty. So for the native application client ID, you just put the application ID in. It was called client ID in the old portal. The domain name also need to match. So you go to Azure Active Directory and click on domain names, and then click on the name. You may only have 1 row here instead of both, 2 rows. You just pick the one that you're using to match up. So now let's give it a try. It's not going to work because we are missing one of the sign-in permission. So I was kind of doing it on purpose, so then we can make sure, kind of 100% sure what needs to what permission needs to be there to make it work. So now it doesn't work. That doesn't, when you are setting things up, it's not a surprise, but let's figure out what's going on. Now, the other thing you can check is, go back to the cluster admin and then check whether or not the permissions are saved away correctly. So that's another thing we can check. So go back to the all applications and go to Azure local logging. So this is logging 2, which is the working one. And my initial attempt is to compare and look at the permissions side by side between the old app that I managed to get it working and then the new app that's still yet to work. And let's see if I can do it this way. As I'm still learning the new Azure portal, you see there are 2 signing permissions there, and then the 2 signing permissions are showing up, but it's not showing up under the Microsoft Graph. So I don't know that what happens there. So like eyeballing the permissions difference between left and right doesn't help much. So what we have to do is we have to go back in to the permissions in the app registration. So then we could take a look and find that second sign-in permission and then check the checkbox to get it in. So go to the Microsoft Graph again, and then if you scroll up and down, you should be able to find the second sign-in permission. So sign user in is one of them. Here's another one. It's unchecked. So sign in and read user profile. So check that, and there's you cannot find a third sign in. So that's pretty much all the sign ins we need. So now we can go ahead and save this the change. So let's see. There's maybe some other permissions we can give, but not quite important to get the integration to work. So now we can just go ahead and save the settings, or we can just continue to look up and down to see if there are some other interesting ones we can use. So now it's saved away, and now click on the grant permissions right away, so the permissions will be given. Now with that set, should be easy to check one more time to see if the single sign-on works. So this is a Azure AD user. It's using Azure AD credential, and then there you go, it logs in. So single sign-on on the CentreStack side, it doesn't have to be web application. It could be, you can log in from the Windows app, iPhone app, it should all work. As a quick review of what we've done, so in order for the Azure AD to work, you need an Azure AD application, a local native application, and the application needs to have enough permissions. And the permissions, the most important permissions are the two sign user in and sign user in and read user profile. Both needs to be checked from the Microsoft Graph side. Once that's done, then on the CentreStack side, you just go to group policy, and then the Azure AD integration is a per tenant setting. So you can go to the per tenant setting and then set it up. And then that should be all that's required to get the Azure AD integration to work. And then log into CentreStack using Azure AD credential. Thank you.